Here's the first example from a famous atheist explaining what a delusion is.
The definition of a delusion is a persistent false belief that is maintained despite indisputable evidence to the contrary. To falsely claim something when there is evidence otherwise. And it is a delusion because the beliefs remain fixed even when the facts are against them.
So if I changed my name to Napoleon and I started acting like Napoleon and I got surgery to act shorter, would you call that a delusion? I'm sure he would. But if I changed my name to Kylie and I started using a different voice and I started going on hormone blockers and I got surgery to look like a woman,
The definition of a delusion is a persistent false belief that is maintained.
and I started acting like a woman and calling me a woman, oh, that's not a delusion. That's progress. We need to affirm that. Do you see how arbitrary this is? They deny the truth. And they love this issue. They will excommunicate you from every atheist community if you dissent on this. But why? Use logic against your own belief, atheists. Why? It's a big, meaningless universe. Why is this issue so important when it is clearly a delusion? And this atheist, which has strong opinions on veganism, we can't and we shouldn't eat meat. It is wrong to do because of animal suffering. But what exactly is binding us to this? Why does it matter? What it comes down to, if you keep asking why, is they feel it's bad. They're using their feelings as an argument. Again, they are lying to themselves. It is a meaningless universe. Why is this the top of your moral list? It doesn't matter. Arbitrary, and you use your feelings as an argument on this topic to reject Christianity. But if all animal suffering is bad, well then wouldn't you just stop the existence of animals peacefully? You just stop them from breeding because all they have is suffering. If you try to continue to have these animals alive, then you're rationalizing continuing their suffering. How do you do this moral calculus? It can never be justified. Never answering the question. It's a cope reply. You're never biting the bullet that these morals are not real and you aren't consistent with that. That's the whole point. It is inconsistent the way that you behave. Nothing in the world tells you how the world ought to be. You can never be justified in saying, oh, the world ought to be this way. According to what? Nothing matters. And in this clip, this atheist thinks religion is okay unless it causes these horrible moral things.
The problem is, when people start working on behalf of what a God wants them to do, and we have no access to what an actual God actually wants people to do, that means that they can also work to exterminate the Jews. They can also work to make it so that white people are viewed as superior to brown people. They can also use it to make sure that LGBTQ people can't get married, can't have the same rights as everybody else. Because as soon as you allow people to start saying, the reason I think this is the right action is because of a God, then you have surrendered the only thing of value that we have, which is our autonomy. Us as human beings saying this is the life we want to live.
He's not being consistent. He's not being honest with himself. Someone can come in and say, why should I care about those? Why does it matter? It's a dog-eat-dog world. Look around us. It's all suffering and destruction. Why should we care about that? And talking about individual autonomy. Okay, what individual autonomy? Therefore, you can't transgress on under other individuals. According to what? And what happens if those individuals transgress on you? See, all of it, it's arbitrary on atheism. It doesn't matter. And he's not being honest with himself. Religion is okay as long as it doesn't transgress on my individual autonomy. Why does that matter? Why does your individual autonomy matter? It doesn't matter on atheism. It's a big meaningless universe. And the same atheist will say the Christian God is mean, immoral, misogynistic. Why is any of that bad? What is immoral? None of these exist. Just be honest with yourself. This goes into the bigger theme that the atheists, the skeptics who question everything. Wow, isn't it crazy that just all their opinions magically align with every powerful institution and corporation, the World Economic Forum? I guess free thinking just means matching up all your opinions to the most powerful entities, their social and economic agenda, and they don't question any of them. Can you think of one atheist who dissents on a major position by large institutions, the banks, the corporations, media, finance, anything? They literally just fall in line. So it's like skepticism stops at religion. They're not skeptical of anything else. In my experience, atheists are the most naive people. How can you be an intellectually satisfied atheist? Because atheism always leads to nihilism. You can just ask, why? Why? And if you deny this, then you're just lying to yourself. And we all admit that God would be a good justification for meaning, ethics, how we ought to live. And the atheist has to admit that Christians are at least consistent with their worldview. You may say there's not evidence for the Christian worldviews, but the Christians are consistent. We can look at all the top atheists and none of them are consistent with this line of thinking. And this line of thinking is 100% logical because atheism, it leads to nihilism. It's philosophical suicide because there's no metaphysics on atheism. and there ends up being no ethics, there's no epistemology. That's why the atheists gladly say, I'm an epistemic error theorist. I'm an epistemic nihilist. And do you realize what this means? It means knowledge is impossible. This is bad philosophy, and bad philosophy leads to a bad society. It leads to civilizational suicide. This is the fruits of atheism. Whether you think we evolved to be religious or we were made by God, there is a survival advantage to religion. Atheists will admit this. Having a church, a community center, having generative, pro-family behaviors, less drugs, less promiscuity, more pro-social behaviors. None of this is addressed effectively in atheism, and there's no reason to, because again, atheism is just nihilism. It always leads to nihilism. This internal dialogue I had got me to look at other worldviews, and the reality is that a logical syllogism, scientific evidence, when shown to an atheist, is not going to get them to radically transform their life and say, you know what, I believe in God now. You can show a fat person studies on working out, on eating healthy. Are they going to radically transform their life? Someone who's smoking cigarettes, you can show them all the evidence in the world. It's not a logical problem. For me, it was seeing that I wasn't consistent as an atheist. These other atheists aren't consistent. So what do I have to lose by visiting a church and seeing what they have to say? By looking at all these different religions, maybe I could be wrong. And that is what I have found. There are good reasons to believe in God. The transcendental argument for God, the immateriality of the intellect, the laws of logic. There's lots of ways to prove God. But this entire video was just explaining basically my reasoning, my process. What got me to see that atheists are lying to themselves, that atheism doesn't make any sense, that nihilism doesn't make any sense. And I will end this video by saying to the atheist, you're a religious person just like me. I just go one God further.